In the course of a deposition as part of a public inquiry in Canada, Justin Trudeau has made a startling admission. He now says that there was no hard evidentiary proof when Canada first brought up the killing of Khalistani Hardeep Singh Nijjar with India. As India and Canada's relations nosedive, what happens next? Remember, all of this is unfolding as an Indian inquiry team is headed to the United States of America in relation to US charges that there was a plot to kill Gurpatwan Pannu, another Khalistani separatist who happened to be the lawyer for Hardeep Singh Nijjar. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. Our focus today is on the nose-diving relationship between India and Canada. India has slammed Canada and said that India has always maintained that Canada never placed before India any hard evidence to back up its allegations that there was an Indian hand in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Khalistani separatist, on Canadian soil. All of this at a time when the Americans and the United Kingdom seem to back Canada's demand for due legal process to be cooperated with by the Indian side. India is apoplectic. They say that Justin Trudeau is making preposterous charges and playing essentially to a political gallery as his own approval ratings tank. In fact, now a major military deal might be the first to be knocked off the table as these tensions rise. But all of this is unfolding at the same time as an Indian inquiry team is headed to the United States of America, and India has informed Washington that the man identified as CC1, apparently a CRPF officer on deputation to the RANW, a man that a US court accuses of being involved in a plot to try and kill Gurpatwan Pannu, the lawyer of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. That man has now been detained, he has been arrested, and he's no longer an official with the government. My head spins at even trying to understand all of this. But at this point, the big question is what happens next between India and Canada? Is it going to get a lot worse before it gets any better? Will it get any better? Let me introduce our guests, a very distinguished panel on the program today. Veteran diplomat Ambassador Vivek Katju is with us. Welcome, sir. Tavleen Singh, senior author, columnist, and journalist, is with us. Always a pleasure, Tavleen. Joining us from Canada today is Daniel Bordman. You can see his social media feed to know that he's no fan of Justin Trudeau. But if in India, more or less, politicians are closing ranks, that's not quite what's happening in Canada. There are calls for Trudeau's resignation on his home turf. And also joining us is a very special guest, Sanjay Lazar. He's an aviation expert, but actually I think his designation should read something else in the context of today's program. Sanjay Lazar lost his entire family in the Kanishka bombing. And this was a bombing in which justice has still not been served. And remember, most of those killed on board that plane of Air India were Canadian citizens. And I think one has to just keep repeating it because it's a case that's fallen off public memory. So, Sanjay, thank you for joining us. Let me actually start with Ambassador Vivek Karjo. Have you ever seen something like this? What's unfolding right now? I mean, India, Pakistan, yes, I just got back from Pakistan. India, Canada?
Barkha, not even in India, Pakistan have charges of the kind that Canada has indirectly leveled against India been ever made. Now, let me try to clarify that. In the international game, intelligence agencies accuse each other. Sometimes diplomats are also brought in and they are accused of contravening the Vienna Convention. But fingers are never pointed at the political level. That means at ministers. Because ministers don't get involved in operational matters. Now, in the case of Canada, quite clearly this round began with the NSA's meeting on the 12th of this month in Singapore. Uh, according to a report in the Washington Post, which was carried on the 14th, and it was clearly based on leaks to the Post, to the Washington Post by Canadians. It was mentioned that this meeting went on for 5 hours, and the Indian NSA was quoted as saying things. But the most important aspect of this was that the Canadians, an unnamed Canadian official, was quoted as saying, or perhaps it was not within quotes, but it was attributed to him, that he said that a senior Indian official and an official of RAW was involved, and I'm perhaps paraphrasing now, in orchestrating this kind of criminal activity, extensive criminal activity. And then he named a senior Indian minister as being the senior official. In my experience, this, and that goes back to 1975 when I joined the Foreign Service, such an accusation has never been made. Once, and I wrote this in an article, once matters go out of the intelligence and diplomatic domains into the political domain, it becomes very, very difficult to retrieve the situation. Now, you mentioned two other points I'll make very, very quickly. First point is that the Canadians themselves asked for something which, in his evidence before this inquiry committee, the Foreign Interference Committee, the Canadian Prime Minister admitted is the Canadian wouldn't have done, which is to lift the diplomatic immunity of Indian diplomats. Certainly, the diplomatic immunity of the head of mission is never even asked to be lifted. That too is a new one. And to accuse the High Commissioner and five of his other colleagues as persons of interest in a crime, that is amazing. The next point that I wish to make is that all this was done when the Canadians went on what I will now call a fishing expedition. They had they had some information, some intelligence, which they say pointed to the Indians, to the Indian intelligence agency. And they are asking the Indian intelligence agency, which they are accusing, of cooperating with them. Have you ever heard something as ridiculous as this? That you make an accusation against someone and then you tell him, now you corroborate that accusation that I'm making. There has to be a sense of proportion here. And the very last thing, as far as the Five Eyes coming together, they are allies. Obviously, they'll come together. The American case you mentioned stands on a different footing altogether.
Okay, you say it stands on a different footing, except for the fact that both of these men are Khalistani separatists, and one was the lawyer for the other. They've often shared platforms. Gurpatwan Pannu was often seen in Canada calling openly for violence against India, and we'll come to what's happening between America and India in a moment from now. I want to play out actually what Trudeau said in his deposition, where he's talking about the fact that at the first time when this is raised at the level of the Prime Minister between Trudeau and Modi, there was no quote unquote hard evidentiary proof that the Canadians had to offer. Take a look, and then I'll come right back to the panel.
Summit. And we had the opportunity of making it a very uncomfortable summit for India if we went public with these allegations ahead of time. We chose not to. We chose to continue to work behind the scenes to try and get India to cooperate with us. Their asks of us was, well, how much do you know? Give us the evidence you have on this. And our response was, well, it's within your security agencies. You should be looking into how much they know. You should be engaging us. No, tell us what you know. Show us the evidence. And at that point, it was primarily intelligence, not hard evidentiary proof. So we said, well, let's work together and look into your security services and maybe we can get that done. No, we're not doing that. It culminated with a conversation I had with Prime Minister Modi on after the end of the last session at the G20 in Delhi, where I sat down and shared that we knew that they were involved and expressed a real concern.
Okay, Daniel, how is this playing out in Canada? I mean, this statement, this deposition, obviously he's talking about a previous time. He's talking about when Trudeau was here for the G20 summit. But to say that at that point there was no hard evidentiary proof, and it was more about asking the Indians to look within our intelligence services, I mean, which country is going to sort of cooperate with that kind of tall claim?
Yeah, listen, I understand the Indian perspective here, especially if Canada ask access to India's security internally. Listen, I wouldn't give it to the Canadian government because you can't be certain that there aren't any, let's say, hostile ideological radicals who might be a bit outside the norm within the Canadian security apparatus, and that might undermine. I mean, I don't think you could really trust our agencies, considering the fact that the real scandal in Canada. So you're asking, how is this going in Canada? You guys might be ahead of us in time. You might think you're living in the future, but we're actually like 2.5 Trudeaus ahead of you. And these are Trudeau scandals. So the real scandal in Canada right now, what is Canada focusing on? Well, the fact that there's 11 traitors in the parliament, right? The security agency has said that there's 11 people currently sitting in office who are foreign assets. And Justin Trudeau has been protecting them for a while. And what Trudeau tried to do with India, so about 2 days ago, I mean, when Trudeau ruined or spat on or continued to, I guess, revive relations with India just to like drone strike it again, metaphorically, that's just a regular Tuesday in Canada, literally, right? By Wednesday and Thursday, we are different because he tried to do like a rally around the flag moment, right? Everyone come together. We have an external enemy. India's coming at us. And the RCMP comes out with this accusation. So even the Conservative Party, when the RCMP says something, has to have, they did the rally to the flag. These are serious. We stand by. We want an investigation. Canadian sovereignty, good. They did the thing, right? And then even though the Conservatives rallied to the flag, the Liberals started to attack the Conservatives on this. Then he went and used the deposition to accuse the Conservative Party and the Pierre Poilievre of being responsible for the fact that 11 traitors have infiltrated his government because he won't get the security clearance to listen to the briefing. Now, this is all asinine because in Canadian politics, the leader of the opposition never really gets full security clearance to get these briefings, because if he gets the briefings, then he's like sworn to secrecy and he can't talk about things, right? So his chief of staff gets the briefing, so they would be able to tell him anything. But so the Liberals are going to say, well, some of these traitors, some of these foreign influence operatives are also in the Conservative Party. And I've been saying for years, yeah, the Khalistanis are trying to infiltrate every single political party. You want to know who is in the Conservative Party is a potential foreign asset? Call me, I'll tell you. Right? It's there. They're in the Liberals. They're in the NDP. They're everywhere. They're not that hard to find. So Poilievre sort of called the bluff and said, yeah, release all the names. Yeah, release all the names. Release the names in our party, in your party, and everyone's party. Just release the names. You don't need to tell me. So this is where the Canadian public is on the scandal. Like, where are we? We're 2.5 Trudeaus ahead of you in terms of scandals. And it's sort of he tried to rally the flag moment. Now he's using his own foreign interference and the fact that there's literal treason in the parliament to try and attack the opposition who has not been in power in 10 years. So that's where Canada is on the foreign interference stuff right now. All this stuff, again, with India and us flubbing it, it depends where you live in reality in Canada, right? If you live in sort of mainstream media reality, if you watch the CBC or Global News, and then you read the Toronto Star or the Globe and Mail or one of the, sort of institutional Trudeau-funded media, then you only hear the Canadian line. Then you hear India's a wild terrorist state. They're behind everything. The Indian government, they ate your homework. That's why you were late for. Like it's ridiculous, right? But if you have a Twitter account or you're on any type of alternative media, you sort of see both sides. And if you're predisposed to not liking Justin Trudeau, which half the country currently despises the man, then you are more exposed to the Indian narrative, and you've seen, and a lot of people are sort of enjoying. One thing your people are very good at is the creativity of your online meme culture and your ability to be a bit razzle dazzle, let's say, on the internet. With it's going over well with the anti-Trudeau crowd, who is enjoying your assaults on the intellectual character of our glorious leader.
Let me ask you this quickly before I go to Tavleen and Sanjay. Is this at all benefiting Trudeau politically?
So it depends on where you think he would benefit. So in the traditional sense of like, is this going to help him win an election? And with the normal populace, no, but that's all off the table. He's not going to win. Will it help him politically? You could say, right, by endearing himself to these hardcore radicals, his job when he leads office in a year, like he's going to prance around the world like Greta Thunberg. He's going to tell you that you're racist and you're doing climate change and we need more diversity. And he's going to be doing this whole thing through Europe, and he's going to come and lecture you on all your faults. So by building up a strong base of like between the radical Islamists and the Khalistanis and radical leftists and all this different stuff. So when someone writes a book for him, like Justin Trudeau, my memoir, being the greatest man to ever exist, more Khalistanis will probably buy like 1 million copies to money launder to get him to make a speech to do. So in terms of like electoral votes, no, that's all off the table. In terms of millions of dollars in slush funds when he leaves office to prance around the world as some great hero of the left, yeah, he'll probably secure a few $1 million of dark money that way.
I think safer to say Daniel's not a Trudeau fan, but more seriously, I don't know how many Trudeau fans there are, Tavleen, and I think Ambassador Katju makes the kind of perceptive comment that even in India, Pakistan, I don't think we've ever seen a crisis of this nature. What do you make of it? And do you agree that you have to separate it from the Pannu case, that the Americans' handling of that case is very different from how Trudeau has handled it? Or do you join the dots between the two cases?
Look, I'm really not going to wrap myself in the Indian flag on this one. I'm no fan of Trudeau, and what he suffers in Canada is really none of our business in India. But in India, I have to say that I have covered the Sikh Khalistani story longer than any of you, and I've never seen it actually revived deliberately as political policy as I have by this government. Do you know, there was a Khalistan moment in Punjab, which I covered very closely. There was support for this stupid idea, but actually there has been no support for it for at least 2 decades. The only support for it is in Canada. So maybe they should give these guys a little bit of Quebec or something, stick them in the wilderness. They're very good farmers as well. So, they'll develop that area. But there isn't any support in India. And despite that, the Prime Minister and his ministers, senior ministers, have gone on record to charge the farmers during that agitation with all being Khalistanis. Then there was that time when they accused that poor lady from, that young woman in Bangalore and Greta Thunberg together of plotting with some Khalistani thing. Now, the thing is that when you do that, you're actually reviving something that is dead. And that really worries me, because let's not forget that the son of the assassin of Indira Gandhi is now an MP in Parliament. Amritpal Singh, who has been trying to do, to try and, recreate this Khalistani rubbish in Punjab, is also an MP. He may be in jail, but he got elected. So there is some, and, as a Jat Sikh myself, I've always said that there's nothing worse to do with the Jat Sikh than to make him feel that he's somehow threatened. So I'm actually much more worried about the Indian government stirring this up for no reason. And as for the link between the two, with what went on with the American thing with whatever Patwant Singh, Gurpatwant Singh, that the American thing, they actually caught that man being bribed as an assassin. Now, if we're doing this, and I personally have no objections, it's part of a government's, the deep state, whatever activity. I wish we'd killed a few more people in Pakistan than we did. So, this should happen if we can do it, but we need to do it better, and we shouldn't be doing it in a fellow democratic country. So if we're doing it in America, we could be doing it in Canada. I don't know. And if we're doing it, we'll get the right guys and do it more efficiently.
If we're doing it, do it better. The point is that, the Americans, and I think a lot of Indians feel this Western hypocrisy. The Americans have always tom-tommed it when they've done it. And we don't know how many botched attempts they may have also encountered. But Sanjay, these are two separate points. I think I take Tavleen's point that, what is going on in Punjab, why someone like Amritpal Singh sitting in parliament, is there a danger of ratcheting up something that is long buried in the past? And, you lost your entire family in that Kanishka bombing. You've paid a personal cost. I've spoken to you and many other sort of family members of those who were on board that plane. And one of the points that you've made again and again and again and again is that Canada has simply never had any interest in bringing the perpetrators of Kanishka to justice. Now, when you see this entire debate around Nijjar, around Pannu, the entire sort of Five Eyes, the sort of Western grouping that does intelligence sharing up in arms, what do you feel? What do you think?
A lot of shock, a lot of pain, Barkha. First of all, I'd just like to, continue on Miss Tavleen Singh's point. She's very correct. This was, the Khalistan was a dead issue for 30 years, except in our hearts, who had lost our family members in the Kanishka. I think in the last 1 or 2 years, we've suddenly, of course, it's also due to Justin Trudeau and the NDP bringing it back center stage, but it's become, the heart and soul of our real politic here in India as well. We're accusing, we're talking of something. This was eradicated almost. We're seeing it come back into the picture. Now, a couple of things here. Nijjar is and was a terrorist, and I'm going back 2016. India sent a dossier to the FBI and CSIS. Nijjar was named there. When Trudeau came in 2018, Captain Amrinder Singh was the Punjab Chief Minister. He wouldn't let him land. He said, you give me Nijjar. So his bank accounts were frozen. He was on a no-fly list. Now you have the Prime Minister of Canada, who himself had put him on a no-fly list, and now talks about, this guy is Canadian citizen killed by Indians. You're right. They didn't produce any proof. Trudeau has admitted. And, what about all the other terrorists? What about the people linked to the Kanishka? They've not bothered. Now, as far as the investigation goes, we all know the dreadful track record of the RCMP, which Daniel will attest to. They've had the Robert Picton case, the Kanishka case, the Burns. I can name about 50 cases, major cases, that they've not either botched up or they've deliberately, sabotaged. How can we rely on these guys? They don't have evidence. They're relying on rumors. They're talking about Facebook posts of some gangster and, blackballing a country. I think this is completely out of form. They still, if you still have the odd Canadian MP saying, let's reopen the case, let's reopen the Kanishka bombing inquiry. I mean, they've spent 140 million. We've spent 30 years doing it, and you still can't get it right. How do you expect to get this right? It's painful. And I think that, India has done some harsh things. Canada has done some crazy things. Like Ambassador said, even with Pakistan, we've never seen this kind of behavior. It's okay, if America and the UK start backing Canada, so be it. But as long as we know what we've done and we are in the clear, let's expose these people for what they are.
And I think you told me that there were nearly 100 children on board that plane, and I also interviewed the wife of one of the pilots of that plane. Do you feel like completely, in a sense, desolate that there will never be justice in this case?
I talk, Barkha, I mean, I can share this with you. Being one of the victims, and Daniel will know, I'm still on the RCMP list. I get, briefings from their police into the investigation. Kanishka is still an open case for the Canadian government and the RCMP and the Crown. So they're hoping for either a deathbed confession or some kind of breakthrough at some point. So they still are spending money. I feel and I pray that someday they give us justice. There were 86 children, and I feel
Yeah,
they were largely.
and that's something I want to ask Tavleen before I come back to Ambassador Katju. You saying if we do it well, and you shouldn't be doing it in democratic countries. I mean, look at this country where, like, I think Daniel would bear me out. Surveys show that a majority of Canadians are not even aware of the role of Khalistanis who have operated from their soil in this bombing. And a majority of those who died on board of this plane were Canadian citizens. They may have been of Indian origin, but they were Canadian citizens, Tavleen. So, I mean, I'm not advocating for extrajudicial killings. I'm just saying I find it difficult to work up any sort of empathy for Trudeau's argument at this point. I feel a kind of revulsion, at the things that he's saying.
I totally agree with you. The 85 bombing of that Air India flight was the worst act of terrorism. Not even the Bombay 2611, Pakistani thing was as bad as that. And, there were Khalistanis involved, and they were Canadian citizens, and they were never actually punished. And, for me, that is truly one of the most horrifying acts of terrorism that I have ever seen, anywhere in the world. It's inexcusable that a country like Canada, which must have better ways of solving these kind of things than we do in India, has not been able to bring these guys to justice. And to tell you the truth, if they had killed those guys, I would have said, fair enough. Just as if they kill Hafiz Saeed in Pakistan, fair enough. These guys are killers, and they cannot expect then to have, all the rights of non-killers, even if they're in a democratic country. So, I totally blame Trudeau for all that. And, as I said, I'm no fan of his. But, there are separate issues here. We've also got to, we've got to recognize that India needs to behave a little bit more, like a mature democracy. Where, the hysteria in the Indian media at the moment, everyone, wrapping themselves up in the flag and yelling and screeching on television, it's pathetic. It's not the country that I was born into or that I was proud of. What is this hysteria? And the hysteria goes right into government. You've got people, politicians talking like, oh, we will do this, we will do that. Calm down, really.
I think what I hear you saying is, if this has been done, do it more effectively.
Yes.
That's in a way the bottom line, and target those who have really destabilized the nation. But Ambassador Katju, you say Pannu is different, the Americans are different. I want to read out a very perceptive comment from one of our audience members watching this show live. The Americans are using the Canadians to pursue the issue, says Saurabh. The Five Eyes will come together to stress the sovereignty issue, especially after the Saudi case, and to send a message to the Russians. Now, the first part of his comment is the interesting one, right? To put it bluntly, the Khalistan issue and the Air India bombing have been put in a silo. They're being seen as an immigrant issue and not a mainstream problem in Canada. And I think that's an important comment. But the other important comment is the argument that the Americans are actually batting or, using the Canadians as a proxy. Now, why do I say this? Look at the initial comment that came from the White House spokesperson, basically backing the Canadians. It's only after India informed the Canadians, and this is now public information, that CC1, the RANW agent on deputation from the CRPF, has been arrested. And this has been conveyed just as the Indian inquiry team goes to the Americans, that the White House kind of modified its statement. Something very peculiar is going on here. Like, I don't see the Canadians and the Americans as separate entities, and I don't see Pannu and Nijjar as separate entities. Why do you see them as separate?
No, I think you'll have to give me a minute to clarify this. What did Trudeau say today? He said we had intelligence, we did not have hard evidence. There is a fundamental distinction between intelligence and evidence. Evidence is that what you can produce in a court of law, and there are rules of evidence on which basis every country's criminal system does so. Now, the problem with intelligence is that you can't convert it easily into evidence, so therefore you can't produce it in a court of law for prosecution purposes. Strangely enough, what Trudeau was asking the Prime Minister to do way back last year was, please allow us to some kind of jointly investigate your own intelligence system so that we can convert our intelligence into evidence which can be used in a court of law. Now, that's ridiculous. The Americans, on the other hand, were able to get hold of a person. How they were able to get hold of a person, we all know. I don't need to go into that. They were able to extradite him, and they were able then to use whatever he said in a court of law. That is the distinction. Now, let me come to one other point, which is significant. The Canadians have 4 Indians in their custody at the moment. They are Indian nationals, and presumably, that's what's been announced, they have arrested them in connection with Nijjar's killing. We don't know as yet, but maybe they've been able to get that some evidence which can help them prosecute, and that is an indication that Trudeau has been given, that we have enough material to take this matter to court, and he has said that what the police, Canadian police, did right now was to disrupt a certain criminal, quote unquote, activity which was going on, which was necessary for the safety of his citizens. He was doing so for whatever purpose. I think our Canadian colleague on the panel will be better able to explain. Now, I have argued in my writings that when this matter, if and when this matter goes to court and evidence is produced, then we'll be coming to a bridge that we'll have to then cross. We don't know. There are question marks there. But as of today, they've said nothing. Now, you then come to the Americans ganging up with the Canadians. Look, in a matter like this, when one of the Five Eyes say that, look, it's a vital matter for us, it's a matter concerning our national interest, then all of them come together. We know they share evidence, they share information, they share intelligence. We know this. And they're allies. And allies are supposed to come together in such situations. So I don't take that very seriously. What I do take seriously, and what my focus will be now, will be on the case that will take place, presumably, since they have these 4 boys in their custody, in their courts. That is the time when we'll have to really see what they have.
Before I get Daniel to respond, basically what you're saying is that the Americans have built a case with more defined proof. They've actually got somebody in their custody now, who allegedly told an undercover agent to kill Gurpatwan Pannu. That's the case in a nutshell. And that this guy was contracted by so-called CC1, who has now been arrested by the Indians.
Look, from the newspaper reports, that's all that I can go by. This man traveled to a certain European country. He was, why he went there, we don't know. There, he was nabbed with the cooperation of that European country by the Americans. Once they had him, then their intelligence could be converted into evidence.
All I'm asking
Please remember,
I understand, but do you fear that these cases will overlap, that America and Canada will adjudicate on this together? That is my question.
No, of course not. Of course not. They are 2 separate jurisdictions, criminal jurisdictions. They are 2 separate, if alleged conspiracies, I'm underlining the word alleged conspiracies, So they are two separate matters altogether. Canadian criminal law, I would imagine, is not on all fours with American criminal law. And this man has already been indicted. He's been produced
Yeah.
in a court of law in America. And in this case, because once they had this man, the Indian government said, we will cooperate.
Okay, let's come back to Canada, which is a contrasting picture in how they've handled it. No definable proof, nobody that they've, nothing so far. You make the interesting point about these 4 arrested people. Now, Trudeau himself in his deposition names the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. This gang, as we know, was most recently linked to the shooting of Baba Siddiqui in the city of Mumbai. The foreign ministry has today responded, reversing the charge and saying that India has been asking Canada to arrest several members of this gang, and the Trudeau administration took no action. Take a look, and then I'll come back to you, Daniel.
लॉरेंस बिश्नोई के बारे में, लॉरेंस बिश्नोई के गैंग और अन्य गैंग के बारे में, सिंडिकेट्स के बारे में हमने कनाडा से कई साल पहले और हाल में भी उनको बताया है, उनसे प्रोविजनल अरेस्ट का रिक्वेस्ट किया है. अब तक उन्होंने इस पे कोई एक्शन नहीं लिया है, ना कोई अरेस्ट किया है. और हम लोग तो बार बार ये बात कहते रहे हैं कि इतने सारे लोग जो जिनके बारे में आपको बताया जा रहा है, जो एंटी इंडिया एक्टिविटीज़ वहाँ करते हैं, जो अलगाववादी ताकतों को जो बढ़ावा देते हैं, उसके खिलाफ सख्त से सख्त कार्रवाई करनी चाहिए. लेकिन उन्होंने अभी तक इस मामले पर फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच के नामने में को आगे लाके वो कहते हैं कि ये फ्रीडम स्पीच का मामला है, हम इसमें कुछ नहीं कर सकते. ये बेबुनियाद है, हमारे तरफ से ये बेबुनियाद है. उन्होंने कोई एक्शन नहीं लिया जो हमारे कोर कंसर्न्स है उस पर अभी तक. और उसके पीछे एक राजनीतिक मंशा भी है जो आप जानते हैं.
Since that was in Hindi, I'll just roughly translate that for you, Daniel. He's basically saying that we have been repeatedly raising with the Canadians the fact that there are those who are perpetuating anti-India activities. The Canadian government has done nothing to clamp down on them, and our complaints have included members of the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. But the government did nothing, and now you're turning around and telling us, oh, these members were somehow linked to what happened to Nijjar. But I'm sure most Canadians can't follow the intricacies of this. So what are most people understanding this to be all about? Do they see Trudeau as someone who's wrecked the relationship with India? Are they all agitated that someone like Nijjar was killed? Also, what's very bothersome to me is how Sikh and Khalistani are being used interchangeably in the public conversations in Canada. How the mainstreaming of men like Pannu being invited on Canadian-owned broadcasters, public broadcasters. So, it's almost as if for the other Canadians, there's no difference between being a Sikh and a Khalistani, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've hit on a very big problem, and a very disturbing one, is the willingness, and I think it looks like deliberate intention of the Liberal government, the NDP for sure, and the Canadian institutions that they control, be it the media, are conflating Khalistanis with Sikhs, right? So Nijjar was not a terrorist leader, the head of the Khalistan Tiger Force. He was a Sikh community leader. That's how the CBC refers to him. Every time they want a representative of the Sikh community, it's always the World Sikh Organization. They are the chosen, ambassadors of this. So when you get a narrative from a Sikh community leader in Canada, it's often the World Sikh Organization, which is a hardcore Khalistani. I mean, listen, we've all seen their opening conference where they promised to kill 50,000 Hindus. So the problem between Canada and India can be explained, I think, like this: is there's two issues at play here. And the one that Canada is mostly focusing on is, did they or didn't they? Right? That's kind of what the diplomatic spat is about on paper. Did India do it? Did they not do it? That's one thing. Now there's the core issue, actually, which is, should they have done it or should they not have done that? Right? And this is the wider issue that sometimes gets conflated, because India can make the sort of it's not perfectly, but you could say this is like Hassan Nasrallah, blowing him out of bunker. This is a terrorist. This is a man who's openly advocating for terrorist activities. He was running a terrorist training camp. He was on supporting suicide bombing. He's the head of the Khalistan Tiger Force, offshoot of the Babar Khalisar, yada yada yada. I mean, if you look at Nijjar's Gurdwara right now, their newest event, their public posting this, they're having a memorial service for Tawinder Parmar, the architect of the Air India bombing, the worst terrorist in Canadian history. So the problem of should they not relies on people in Canada having knowledge of the Khalistan movement. And I will be honest, and this might sound hyperbolic, but I'm actually being serious. Outside of the particular communities involved, so if you take out the Indian diaspora community, Hindu, Sikh, and all that, there are maybe dozens of people in Canada who understand the Khalistani issue at any level. So that's why you guys are cursed to suffer through me on Indian television, because you literally can't find anyone else who can even knows
But
the 101.
but that's just shocking, because what that does is that for most Canadians, they don't look at Nijjar and Pannu as basically terrorists. They look at them as members of the Sikh community. That's the problem.
That's the problem. And the media, it's pretty clear that the thumb of the government is on the media switch here, because nothing on the other side gets through. Like, even when they're covering stories of the threats against Air India flights by Khalistanis, they're just random bomb threats. They land in a
I think Ambassador Katju has an interjection, and then I'll let you complete your point. Ambassador Katju?
I think it is the Canadian legal system and their laws that are entirely to blame. Freedom of expression cannot extend to the extent that the Canadians extend. They are saying, on the one hand, Trudeau has said it, that we stand with the territorial integrity of India, but espousing the cause of Khalistan and calling for violence to achieve it is covered by freedom of expression. Now, this is absurd. Laws, and he is projecting it as if this law is immutable. That the Canadian Parliament can't look at this and say that you can't promote violence to achieve your political ends. We are confronted. I think this is an essential problem, and our Canadian colleague can respond to this.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's the problem, that the Western I take Tavleen's point that the TV channels hysteria. I'm just coming to you only. I take the point. Can I just get one sentence in? I take the point that we don't need to have a hysterical discourse, but it is really offensive to see Nijjar, Pannu described as Sikh leaders. It is truly, truly offensive. Go ahead, Daniel. Sorry, complete your point.
Yeah. So listen, I'm with that. I'm going to push back on this Justin Trudeau freedom of speech thing, because this is one of those where the countries are sort of not working on the same planet, and the gaslighting of Trudeau is kind of getting in between us here. Justin Trudeau is in no way a free speech advocate, okay? Especially in the West and the way he is perceived here in Canada. He is running a highly censorious regime, okay? Again, it's treats to media that support him lawfare against anyone who criticizes him. So when Justin Trudeau says, this is all free speech, listen, it's equally gaslighting. The only free speech he cares about is for Khalistani lunatics to run around threatening to kill people. But when it helps the Trudeau narrative, and what they're trying to do is enrage the Indian side into talking about limiting people's free speech. That way they can then come to Canadians and say, look, we're defending Canadian values from hostile foreign actors. And it's sort of the same thing he's doing domestically with the foreign interference, right? So he has a foreign interference scandal about China. He gets Jagmeet to throw India into the mix of China, Pakistan, Iran, Russia, the real problems. Then he goes, DEFCON 1 on India to say, look how strong I am on foreign interference. I kicked out diplomats over this. You have 11 MPs who are active traitors of the CCP, right? So he's inverting reality here. It's the same thing he's doing sort of with the free speech thing, where we support free speech. And again, these aren't issues of free speech, right? Because he wants the Indian government to be talking about, you need to limit free speech. So he can then come and say, listen, I'm trying to protect your rights and freedoms. When in fact, he's the one actually going after the free. Like, there's no greater threat to limiting speech in Canada than Justin Trudeau in his regime. So the issues here is, I would caution you on free speech. Like, he's openly calling for genocide of identifiable groups. Like there are crimes in Canada that he is committing outside of free speech. He's committing harassment. He's direct incitement to genocide, incitement to violence of an identifiable group, like martial supported terrorism. There's 20 laws that are not free speech laws that you can say this is what Panoon is violating. Bing, 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 bing.
Absolutely.
Boom.
I mean, he called for the bombing of an Air India plane. He called for attack on Indian Parliament. He called for an attack on the Hindu community. And these are the men being called Sikh leaders. Sanjay, I want to come back to you from a victim's perspective. This is just galling, right? I mean, I just keep thinking, like, for the rest of us, okay, we're arguing this as, we're looking at it through geopolitics. For you, this is personal.
Yes.
It's personal.
Yes, it is. It's one is heartbreaking because I can literally see my baby sister and in all these things. And you're right, and Daniel is right. The World Sikh Organization are the same guys who stood up in New York at the inaugural conference and said, in return for for the riots in Delhi, we will kill 50,000 Hindus. Parmar was there, Bagri was there, and Parmar said, we will let planes fall from the sky. These are the same guys who are now being called Sikh leaders and Sikh freedom fighters. I just saw the notice celebrating, commemorating Parmar's life on the 20th of October at the Saray Gurdwara. I mean, it's shocking. This guy was killed by the Punjab police with ISI agents in Punjab in his village in 92. He'd crossed the border after he'd bombed Kanishka, after he'd killed scores of policemen. This guy is a terrorist. I mean, out and out. Here you've got Nijjar, who's photographed in an ISI camp with the killer of Byan Singh in Pakistan, and they're celebrating these lives of these guys. It's I have no words.
Do you think somewhere we as a state, not as a government, have not gone hammer and tong in the way we should have on Kanishka?
Absolutely.
On Khalistanis operating out of North America and Canada in general?
Barkha, I'll tell you this. I was interviewed by a Canadian channel not too many days ago, and they wondered why India had never made an issue of this in 40 years. We've really never taken it up. And I'll tell you why. Because I've spoken to about 5 prime ministers personally. I've been close to some of them. I have pleaded for a memorial. I have pleaded for the government to take action along with other families. We've met ministers in the UPA who were related to some of the people who died. I don't want to name them today, but I know of ministers in the UPA who had family members in this bombing. And, the governments were worried because, remember, the politics behind it was very strong in those years. The Sikh parties had great control over various governments, and people didn't want to offend or poke the bear and raise the Khalistan issue again. But we should have taken this to its logical end. We as a country, we didn't.
Please. I think Tavleen wanted to comment. Tavleen, yeah.
Please.
I want to just make it clear that the Sikhs had no control over the Congress governments. All right. Nobody suffered a massacre like the Sikhs did under the Congress. So that is not the reason why they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything because they were inefficient and they were unable to do anything. They should have been more efficient. The Congress government, it is scandalous that after 1985, the story of the Air India crash just died. That, the victims, there was not even a memorial, really. It was allowed to die. But that's got nothing to do with the Sikhs having any power over the governments that came after 1985. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, Sanjay, you link it to larger politics of the Sikh community. I think what Tavleen is saying is inefficiencies or muted responses of government cannot be put on the Sikhs.
No, I don't. I will correct myself. Please, I differentiate between, the Khalistanis who did this and the Sikhs. But obviously, I have spoken to BJP Prime Minister. I have spoken to a Congress Prime Minister, a UPA Prime Minister, and somebody who's a very prominent legal luminary who was in a UPA government, who's lost a niece in this bombing. They all expressed helplessness. Maybe it's inefficiency. I went with a group. We went with a group, the pilot's wife. We went to Delhi. We only pleaded for a memorial. We didn't want justice we fought for on our own. We hired our own lawyers. We went to the criminal trial. I went to Vancouver. I attended them. All the family members did. I went for the inquiry. I was a witness before John Major. I did everything. I still do. And I still follow up. we wanted a memorial for our families. 7 prime ministers have ignored it. Finally, this current prime minister in the first term listened to it but couldn't give it to us, gave us a small plaque inside the Air India complex in Kalina, which is a secure area where nobody else but,
What is the problem with the memorial? I mean, what do they say?
I have no clue. Nobody gives us a straight answer. But that's what I mean.
It's shocking. It really is shocking.
We let it go. We just let this go. I'm not, and unfortunately, Barkha, a lot of Khalistani radicals in Canada use this as an argument to say we didn't do it, your Indian government did it. And that's the shameful thing. For me, I know that's not the truth. For all of us families, for Daniel, for people who've been through the chain of, if you read their rubbish books that they're producing in Canada, which is why I've made it my duty to correct the wrongs. The facts should come out, and we don't want to talk about them.
I have to say that it really makes my blood boil that families have to plead for a memorial. And I want to understand from Ambassador Katju in his last remarks, why did we not go big with this in our global conversations? But Daniel, very quickly, before we close, what do you see happening next? What's going to happen? Is this issue going to go out as Trudeau goes out? He's likely to lose the next election. Like, what do you see happening?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing for Canadians who saw that is the statement that the MEA put out, I believe, yesterday, put all the blame solely on Justin Trudeau. So the way I see it playing out is India-Canada relations, as I say, are probably in cryostasis here. While Justin Trudeau is Prime Minister for the next year, or hopefully less, relations will be on a freeze. And it'll, you're already seeing deals for, strikers falling through and all that. Hopefully, when there is a change of government, because again, Trudeau's down the polls, the NDP's down in the polls right now. I mean, the Quebec Separatist Party, the Bloc Québécois, which only runs in Quebec, it only runs in one particular province, nationally is on pace to be the second party. So its Conservatives are going to be number one in a lot of polls. The Bloc Québécois, which only have MPs running in Quebec, are currently beating both the Liberals and the NDP. And the Liberals are coming in fourth. Like, this is insane numbers. So the government is a walking corpse, which is why they might be doing things that are more sort of reflexive and ideological, because they're not going to win. They're not going to, again, they're going to go from fourth place to fifth place. Who cares at this point? So hopefully, when there's a change of government, you'll see relations improve. And also the November 5th election, who is the president of the United States, will have a lot to do with this as well. So all of this changes on November 5th. Would imagine will you get a Kamala government, which will probably be more hostile towards India and the Modi government, or will you get a Trump administration that will be more friendly towards India? And that will determine Canadian policy going forward.
That's a good point. Ambassador Katju, closing thoughts?
I'm not as optimistic as our Canadian colleague on repairs, on a repair work to the relationship with the departure of Trudeau. Yes, in certain areas it will take place, but once a criminal case gets going, then it goes out of the hands of the political executive. It goes into the realm of the judiciary. And once that happens, then prosecutors can be asked to go slow, but that rarely happens. So the next few months, while Trudeau is still there, if this case is lodged and the case and evidence is produced and charge sheets are given, then it will acquire a life of its own, just as the Pannun case will. That's been my experience with cases. So I'm not so optimistic on this score. Second, I really can't answer why is it that we as a country didn't respond with the empathy that was required when the Kanishka bombing took place. If you allow me a personal thing, I was in Washington at that stage working in our embassy as first secretary. In fact, Jaishankar and I were colleagues in the embassy at that stage. So, and I remember the revulsion in me. In fact, one of our senior colleagues escaped. He was to be on this plane, but his baggage got lost in Washington. Didn't go onto an aircraft, and therefore he traveled separately. He didn't go to Canada to catch this aircraft. That's fate. I also went to the memorial when in Toronto, and I still can feel the emotion when I saw that memorial. It revived the memories of the loss of Kanishka. But why we didn't react in India? Perhaps we're so used to, I mean, I hate saying it, we're so used to such developments that given our population, etc., I'm saying a cruel thing. But perhaps it is this. And this is not the first case. Let me recall that there was a sabotage of an Air India aircraft. I think it was called the Kashmir Princess in the 1950s. How many of us remember that? Do you remember that, Barkha? Lives were lost.
No, but I think there's a difference between. I think there's a difference between life being treated as cheap.
No, that too was a sabotage.
Agreed. But this is institutional terrorism that is still haunting India, and that Sanjay Lazar should have to run from pillar to post to ask for a Kanishka memorial is unacceptable.
Please, I am not defending. I'm only trying to understand why we behave the way we do. Mr. Lazar's point, I've taken his emotions. I can empathize with. I'm only trying to understand why do we behave the way we do. I mean, that is something I think we need to introspect. Why is it that he and the family members who lost their loved ones on the Kanishka bombing have had no reaction from Prime Minister to Prime Minister for as simple a thing as having a memorial in their name?
Yeah.
Having a memorial in the name of all sabotages of Air India aircraft or Indian aircraft. Why? And I'm only trying to understand that. I'm not a sociologist. I can't give you an answer. But it is a question that is within me and it haunts me. But I don't have an answer.
Fair enough. Tavleen, did you want to add to that before we close?
No, really. I mean, I agree with Ambassador Katju that it's shocking. But I think that it isn't because we are, that we have no feelings for these things. 26/11, there's a memorial in Bombay every year. We're coming up to another one, and we do remember those who were killed here. I think that this was at a time when the world was a much different place, and India was a village on its own, and a plane crashes, and it was another time. And certainly the Congress governments that followed paid no attention to it, and that was a crime in my view. That they should have shown more. Sorry.
Ambassador Katju is trying. Yeah, sorry.
Just last point. I agree with Tavleen ji. I think 9/11 brought about a total change in global attitudes towards terrorism. Regret. And therefore, 26/11 followed it. But still, have we got justice? We mark that day, but have we been able to get justice for those who were killed? Or is that case still open and ongoing between India and Pakistan? We've not succeeded in getting justice.
That's a point, but Tavleen, yes, the Congress governments did nothing, but right now would be the time to do the Kanishka Memorial, to remind the world.
I'm horrified that they haven't got a memorial yet, and that they've put it into some obscure thing in Kalina. It makes no sense to me at all. And I think that really what we should do in answer to Trudeau's stupidities is to now set up a real memorial in Delhi, in Parliament House somewhere, and that maybe that'll make Trudeau behave better.
Absolutely, and it will also challenge this conflation that Daniel spoke about between Sikhs and Khalistanis, and treating Nijjar and Pannu as some sort of Sikh leaders. We leave it there. I think I agree with Ambassador Katju. This is not going to get better anytime soon. I think we're going to see a rocky few months up ahead. Sanjay, my heart goes out to you today, and every time we talk about this, I just can't even imagine what it feels like to even go through these conversations and live through what you've lived through. Thank you, Tavleen, Ambassador Katju, Daniel Bordman, and Sanjay Lazar. And to our audience, thank you. See you tomorrow.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.